Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm the Reverend Hellbilly. Welcome to the channel. Some of you may be the first time you see my channel. Uh, we're all about guitars, music, playing guitars, building guitars. Um, you can see me videos live, shorts live, that kind of thing. Anyway, so I used to work at Guitar Center. I worked there for about 5 years, and you know, I was always kind of proud I worked there. It was a job that I went to every day, and yeah, it was a hard job. It's not an easy job working in any retail. I mean, working at McDonald's is hard, but working at Guitar Center was real hard. Uh, every Saturday you had to be there. And sometimes if you played a gig Friday night and you got home at 2 in the morning, you had to be in there at 9:30 to stand around and clap and eat a Dunkin' Donut. Which I was like, hey, could we have something healthy for breakfast once in a while, or healthier? So anyway. Uh, I went into Guitar Center yesterday, and it was an eye-opening, depressing situation. I mean, it was bare. I mean, it was. I mean, it didn't look like toilet paper at Walmart did in April, but it was bare. I mean, this is a smaller Guitar Center. When I worked at Guitar Center, I worked at like the number two in the district, and we'd have to count inventory, which was a big pain in the butt once a year. But I remember counting guitars in inventory for quite a few years. We'd have 3,300 guitars, 3,500 guitars. We would have 2,000 guitars on the floor and 1,500 in the back. Some in boxes ready to go out, and some that needed to be repaired or whatever. So it was something else. But yesterday at this Guitar Center, it was like uh, there was maybe 25 used guitars and maybe 30 new guitars hanging on the wall. And I mean, so and then they didn't have it like spread out or like down low, which I didn't understand. So um and amps just were like, it was bare. It was just unbelievable. Back in the day when I was there, like we would have like two sections of Marshalls and two sections of Fender and a section of Mesa Boogie, and then like a St. Louis music section. So like Ampeg and Crate would have two sections, and then we would have end cap kind of displays of just like boxes of Fender amps and boxes of Crates, and it was I mean, we'd do anything to get this stuff on the floor because the warehouse wasn't that big. That's where I started out working. It was in the warehouse. So, you know, like I said, it was number two. It was kind of a big Guitar Center. Like the bigger bands that like were in like where we were from, like Cheap Trick and Survivor, and those kind of bands would come in, and Bo Diddley would come in once every year to hang out with us because he was doing a benefit in Chicago he did every year, but he would drive out to where we were, which was kind of in the boonies. Not really. It was only like 20-minute ride on the highway, but so like we were number two, but we were pretty popular with like a lot of the bigger bands and musicians, and they would send their kids in there too and stuff. So anyway, this one yesterday was just like I just couldn't believe how it was just like they have like a little like I don't know, accessories has changed. Back in my day when I worked in accessories, I had 900 strings, like it seemed, different strings, and now they're down to less strings. They're down to like a little a 12-foot section that's only 5 feet high, and half of that was empty. It was just like, wow. I mean, I know that like I know times are hard for Guitar Center, but like you gotta have stock somewhere to put on the floor, you know. And I said to the guys, I said, um, are you guys taking in used gear? And they're like, oh, we're taking all the used gear, we can get. And I had a couple of pedals that I wanted to trade in for. They had a Dan Electro Nifty 50 on the internet. So when I went there, I was like, oh, I want to play that Nifty 50. Well, they didn't have the Nifty 50 anymore, so, which I could see why. But so I didn't want to give them those pedals for, something I didn't want. It didn't make no sense. They really kind of needed them. I mean, they have usually like 2 displays of used pedals, which is like, 7 feet high, these glass displays. And usually, like, they're stacked on top of each other. You're like looking through there, like, ooh, what's in there? What's in there? And they didn't even have 2 shelves of stuff. And so they had it all spread out, so it looked like there was stuff in there, but there wasn't nothing in there. I was just like, oof, yeah, no guitars, no amps. The drum section looked fine. Pro Audio looked fine, I mean, there was stuff in Pro Audio, like everything that you would imagine. So, yeah, so I don't know. It's kind of depressing. And, to me, when they started doing lessons, I was like, that's not a Guitar Center thing, lessons. The name on the sign says Guitar Center. I know lessons are involved in that, but that's more of like a mom and pop personal thing to me, I think, than going to Guitar Center for a lesson. I don't go to Guitar Center for a lesson, Anyway, so, like I said, I spent a lot of years working at Guitar Center, and, it was just such a difference, I didn't look in the acoustic room. That's usually not my thing, and I should have looked in there, but I was so just like floored that it was so like just empty everywhere, and I mean, just like, I don't think they had 2 Les Pauls in there, and I didn't see a Paul Reed Smith at all. And I mean, I don't play either of those guitars, but those are selling guitars. Like when I worked at Guitar Center, I sold a PRS at least if not every month, every other month, and a Gibson once a week, a Les Paul once a week. We used to have our own Les Paul, a Guitar Center exclusive. They came in like black, brown, and red, and they were all mahogany. They didn't have a maple cap on them, so they were kind of like a studio, but they weren't a studio. But they were good guitars, The Gibson rep actually gave me one once because he used to come see me play and say like, hey, how come you never play a Gibson? And I told him the story of my debacle with Gibson and my B-grade endorsement. So he gave me one. And the funny thing is I had a B endorsement, which meant you didn't get a guitar that worked. You got like one with a broken tuning peg or something was like off on it. I was like, what kind of an endorsement is this? And anyway, so he gave me this Les Paul. He calls me out and says, hey, come out to the car. And it was like a Tuesday or a Wednesday, so there was nobody in the store. So I just said, to whoever I was working with, I think it was Egon, I'm like, hey, watch the counter. I got to run outside for a second. And, I was thinking it was a puff, puff, pass situation or something like that. So he takes me out and he opens the trunk. And he's like, here, I got you this. And it was this black Les Paul, which, I'm like, ooh, that's pretty cool, He's like, I got it for you. I was like, oh, really? I'm like, is this a B-grade endorsement? He's like, no. But, I mean, it doesn't have a tailpiece. The tailpiece was missing, but it had the part where you do the intonation on it. So I said, well, I'm going to go put a Bigsby on it because I had a Bigsby at home to put on a different guitar that I got rid of because it just didn't play good. And he's like, you know what, have at it. So, when you get a free Gibson, you don't mind putting the Bigsby screw in the front of it, which I did. And, I played that guitar for 10 years, and, I really liked the guitar. But a friend of mine had a really nice 45 one day, and I was like, I wanted that gun. So I traded him that guitar for it. So, whatever. It was a free guitar. I got a gun out of it. I wound up selling the gun later because I really didn't like it. But that's how guitars are, and stuff. Some you save, some you keep, some you don't. But Guitar Center, man, I don't know. And so I just wanted to do a series because I worked at Guitar Center and tell you guys some of the inside stuff that happened, in the series. And I was thinking about doing it, and then going in there yesterday, it really kicked it off for me, oof, this might be gone soon, so let me do this series so at least someone, people that worked with me will probably remember, and so that's the thing. I worked at Guitar Center. There was a lot of great people that worked there. It was a good time working there. But the corporation itself, I won't even use the word for what they were. I'll give you one example though. They used to make us hugely busy day. Saturday, I got 150 people. I'm working in the accessories department. I mean, you can't even imagine how hard it is to sell accessories and stay viable on the sales thing, because you sell one Les Paul on a Saturday, you're good. I gotta sell strings, picks. I gotta sell 900 picks and 27 sets of strings to even be anywhere near what a Les Paul goes out the door for, or a Paul Reed Smith, or whatever. So it's hard work. But they used to make us punch out at lunchtime, go back to work for a half hour, and then punch back in. And I'm like, I'm busy. If you don't want me to take lunch, then that's fine. But I don't have time to go punch out at an accessories counter and punch out, and then come punch back in. I got sales. Sales at accessories were like, those are fast-paced accessories. Sales. That's not like a guitar sale. Like a guitar sale could take you 2 hours. That's not a big deal. But if I'm selling you, 3 Dunlop picks and a set of GHS strings, I don't have time. I got to get on to the next guy who wants a Boss pedal, and the next guy. In a half hour, I can have 3 sales done. I don't have time to go be punching out and punching back in. So I used to punch out and never punch back in. I would refuse to do it. I would think, oh yeah, you want me to punch out? That's fine. I'm going to go punch out. I would never punch back in. I'm like, you can do it. You have the time to sit on the computer and do it. But that was, I wasn't mad at my manager, but I got called in every month, because you didn't punch back in. So Monday through Thursday, when it was a normal day, it was fine to take your lunch. But if it was a Friday, Saturday, Sunday where we were busy, because we would have those sales, or we would, remember those sales they used to have? People would line up outside. We'd have to get there. The store would open at 10. We'd have to get there at 9:30. Why? I had to be there at 9:30. But all right, just because I think someone should get have to be there. And these people would be lined up like, Stevie Ray Vaughan is coming to the store. Somebody special is going to come to the stores just to buy, those 3 Ernie Ball strings for $10. That tomorrow, those 3 Ernie Ball strings will be $9.50, because if you do the math, So yeah. So I just wanted to do this series on what it's really like working at Guitar Center, and fill you in. It's not all bad. I worked with some great people. I had some great times. Oh, we would laugh our butt off at some stuff and some customers, and So, and then I know some good stories about other Guitar Center. So I just thought I would do this series on Guitar Center employees, because you know what? The way it looks, well, there might not be Guitar Center employees in a little while. I mean, I'm hoping that's not the case, because, good or bad, Guitar Center's kind of like an icon. When I was young, the first Guitar Center in our town opened, and the thing about it was, when you were young, I was young. I think I was like 12. You couldn't get a guitar. All you could get was like low grade guitars and high grade guitars. There was like no middle ground. So you would get stuck playing, Silvertones and Dan Electros and Tiescos and even worse stuff than that. You couldn't get your hands on a Squier or an Epiphone. Though, they weren't around. Now you could go to like pawn shops and stuff, and you could find like melody makers, and you could buy an old Stratocaster that somebody really beat on and really modified, and probably took the neck off of this and the body and that and made it and took it to the pawn shop, and you could get you had to work hard at it, but then came Guitar Center, and well, there was a music store that was like the big music store in town, with the ads, and you used to go in there, and now I'm talking like in the 70s and early 80s. I mean, early 80s, and He's like, how much is that Les Paul? It's $5,000. Can you imagine $5,000 in 1980? What kind of money that was? You could buy a freaking house for $20,000. So how are you gonna get $5,000 to buy a Les Paul? Well, then Guitar Center came along, and I walked into Guitar Center on day one with my stepdad, and I was like, Dad, do you see the price on that Les Paul? It's only $1,800. Which still is an outrageous amount of money. You know what I'm saying? You could buy a Trans Am for $1,800, or whatever. And he's like, yeah, yeah. And I remember the first day we walked in there, he bought a Japanese Squire Bullet. Oh, it was a lead 2. It was I think it was a Fender lead 2. It was made in Japan, and it was a Stratocaster, but it only had 2 single coil pickups. And man, it played good. It was a good guitar. I liked that guitar. That was like the first Fender guitar that I really got to play, because everybody in my family, like my grandpa played Epiphones and Gibsons, and yeah, that's what I was always. And then I had an Epiphone, and my stepdad had an Epiphone 12-string. So there was a lot of Epiphones played around, and those were good guitars. At the time we didn't think they were that great of guitars, but in retrospect, those were good guitars. I wouldn't mind having, like, I had an Epiphone Scroll. I wouldn't mind having that. But that was the thing about Guitar Center, was all of a sudden those prices, like I said, $1,800 is a lot of money, but it's not $5,000. So you know what I'm saying? Now, like, if I had $5,000, I could buy a Les Paul and a Marshall stack, because they actually had Marshall stacks. That was the other thing. Trying to get a Marshall stack at this other store. There's another that was, $3,000. Well, I walked into Guitar Center, and they had these awesome 30-watt Marshall stacks. I think they were like $499 for the whole stack. They were small. They were 410s. I still have those cabinets. Fantastic cabinets, and whatever people said, oh, that's not blah blah blah. I'm like, whatever, I got a Marshall stack, I don't care what you have to say. No, done. So because we were all playing PVs, which I'm not knocking PV, but I just did not like PV. I did not like the tone. I didn't like the look. I just, everybody had PV, just wasn't my thing. So yeah, so I have a little bit of a in my heart for Guitar Center, because that was one of the first music stores that made these things accessible to us as young musicians. That we could go in there. I could go in there with $100 and I could come out with a guitar. I could go in there with $100 and come out with a used cabinet. I could go in there with $100 and come out with a bass head. May not be the bass head I wanted, but if you're in a band and you gotta getting $100 back in those days was something. So Guitar Center really, it really did help us as young musicians, because you got to remember, we didn't have internet. You had to go out and find it, and we didn't have catalogs like Musician's Friend catalog. We didn't have any of that. You had to go in like a newspaper and like read and print and call some guy up and drive over to his house to see a guitar with 5 strings on it that hadn't been played in 7 years, and do you want to buy it or not? So yeah, Guitar Center really, and just the choices of stuff, because like I'm not knocking like the little mom and pop stores that we would shop in, but they didn't have 30 different strings to choose from. You got the Ernie Ball strings. Everybody played this slinky, the super slinky strings. And I was always, like, they give you 2 high E's. That means one of them's going to break, don't it? So anyway, but I have some cool stories about Guitar Centers and working at one, and some other stories that I know about other Guitar Centers. So I just wanted to do this series on, so I used to work at Guitar Center. So if you enjoy this, do me a favor, give me a like, subscribe to my channel, hit the like button, ring the bell. I try to put out videos all the time. I usually have a guitar in my hand when we're doing a video, or we're fixing a guitar, or building a guitar, or I'm out playing a guitar. So this is a little bit different for me. But I just wanted to do this for, history, because if Guitar Center goes away, it's going to be a very sad day, I think. All right? Okay. Reverend Hellbilly saying thanks. Cheers to you. Let your God go with you. And I'll see you soon. Right on.